Did you know that when your cruise ship docks in Skagway, Alaska, you're less than 15 miles from the Canadian border? In this video, I'll show you how incredibly easy it is to rent a car and drive yourself up the White Pass summit into Canada. Visit the heart-pounding Yukon Suspension Bridge and have the kind of port day few cruisers get to experience, with plenty of moments to stop and explore the breathtaking scenery that makes Alaska so special. All at your own pace, without a single tour bus in sight. Hi, I'm Tiffany from Destination for Vacation. Thanks for joining me. Skagway is a favorite stop for most cruisers for a reason. The scenery is spectacular. The history? Fascinating. And the train? Well, it's a must-do for many cruisers. But what if I told you that most of that same stunning scenery can be experienced along the Klondike Highway? And all it takes is a car rental that's a lot easier than most people would expect. I know it's not a train, which I think all cruisers should experience at least once. But if you've been there, done that, and you want to truly experience Alaska, you want to feel it rather than just see it from a window with 200 other people, renting a car and admiring the rugged mountain views as you drive this route yourself is something you're never going to forget. Many visitors to Alaska are a little hesitant about renting a car, maybe because they're scared of getting lost in Alaska's vast wilderness or imagine treacherous ice-covered roads. But this isn't a Discovery Channel show, and it's not the middle of winter. You're going on a day trip, and this isn't Siberia. There's generally one road in and one road out, and for Skagway, that's the Klondike Highway, and the scenery along it is absolutely spectacular. I rented my car about 2 weeks in advance from Turo, which is kind of like the Airbnb of car rentals. You reserve the car you want from local car owners using Turo's website. I was so impressed with how easy my rental experience was in Juneau that I decided to try Turo again the next time I cruised. In a small port town like Skagway, Turo is often the most practical option available, and my Skagway Turo experience was just as smooth. If you want to learn more about the logistics of using Turo, then watch this video on Destination for Vacation's channel, where I walk through step-by-step how to use the site and rent the car. You'll also see the sites I drove to in Juneau. I'll link the video in the show notes below. And no, I'm not a spokesperson for Turo, or compensated in any way. Although Turo, if you're watching, I arranged everything ahead of time with the car's owner through the Turo app, and when we docked, it was just a simple walk from the cruise ship to the ferry building's parking lot, a few blocks away. That's it. No shuttle, no rental car counter, no waiting in line. The car was right there waiting for me. Time to hit the road. If you've been a little reluctant to rent a car on a port day in Alaska, Skagway is probably one of the easiest places to do it. Driving is an absolute breeze. There's no real traffic, the roads are well marked, so you feel completely at ease. As you head out of town on the South Klondike Highway, you start climbing in elevation almost immediately. The road hugs the mountainside as it winds upward, and within just a few minutes, Skagway starts to shrink below you. You're moving through layers of scenery. First, the lush, dense forest at the lower elevations, then the trees thinning out as you climb higher, giving way to open rocky slopes, rushing waterfalls, and views that just keep expanding the further up you go. You'll pass the William Moore Suspension Bridge. Built in 1976 over a deep gorge, it was later repurposed in 2019 as a pedestrian viewpoint. You'll see waterfalls tumbling down the cliffs right alongside the road. Pull over, take pictures. There's no one rushing you. And that's how the car makes all the difference. On the train, you're on a schedule. You see the same views from the same window, at the same pace, surrounded by a packed car full of fellow passengers. It's a great experience, don't get me wrong, but it's a shared experience, a group experience. Out here on the road, it's just you, the mountains, and whatever you decide to do next. You want to stop and stand at the edge of a canyon and just take it all in for 5 minutes? Go ahead. You want to double back for a second look at something you almost drove past? Do it. Nobody's waiting. As you approach the White Pass summit, the landscape turns almost otherworldly. Alpine tundra, snow lingering on the peaks even in summer, the kind of vast, open silence that you just can't get from a tour. The air feels different up there. Cleaner, colder, and you almost have it entirely to yourself. So many people don't realize just how close Canada is to Skagway. You're only about 15 miles from the border from where your ship is docked. Just a short drive up that gorgeous highway, and you're crossing into a whole other country. But you do need to bring your passport. The crossing itself takes just a few minutes. There's little traffic at this remote border station. Before you know it, you're officially in Canada. It couldn't be any easier. For this trip, I chose to visit the Yukon Suspension Bridge, which is just about another 10 minutes down the road from the border. So the total drive from Skagway is roughly 28 miles, about 30 minutes if you don't want to make any stops. But why would you not make any stops along the way? That's the whole point of renting the car. The bridge itself is a pedestrian cable suspension bridge spanning 180 feet across the gorgeous Tutshi River Canyon in British Columbia. The views from that bridge are stunning. The river rushing below you, the mountains all around, the pure wilderness of it all. I'm not a fan of heights and hated every moment of crossing that bridge, while somehow loving it at the same time. There's an interesting backstory to the bridge. The original owner simply wanted to build a bridge, and did it. What started as one person's dream became a great tourist attraction. Today, there's also a small on-site cafe where you can grab coffee and snacks, as well as a gift shop. The exhibits provide cultural and geological information about the region as well. Most ships offer a shore excursion to this bridge by motor coach, and you can also find small private tours that include this stop. Those tickets run anywhere between $80 to $150 and more. But when you drive yourself, it's $22 a ticket for adults, even less for children and seniors. I had a busy port day in Skagway because prior to picking up my car, I had taken a 2-hour motorized raft tour of the Lynn Canal, which is the deepest fjord in North America. So by the time I made it to the suspension bridge around noon, the tour buses were just getting ready to leave, and only a few fellow drivers like myself remained. The whole experience feels off the beaten path, even though it's easily accessible by car. You won't feel like you're in the middle of a cruise ship crowd here. You'll feel like you're in the middle of real, wild Canada. And for those of us who love nature and a little adventure, that's the point. Plan on spending anywhere between an hour and 90 minutes here. Then it's a short, scenic drive back to America. Right after crossing the border, you'll find the Alaska state sign, with more than a few people taking advantage of a great photo opportunity. After approaching Skagway, it was time to turn off the highway and drive down a winding dirt road to the ghost town of Dyea. During the Klondike Gold Rush, Dyea was actually a rival town to Skagway, a bustling community of over 10,000 people, the gateway to the famous Chilkoot Trail that gold seekers used to reach the Klondike. But when the White Pass and Yukon Route Railroad was built through Skagway in 1898, the traffic shifted almost overnight. By 1900, most people had left Dyea, and nature has long since reclaimed the land. Today, there's very little left to indicate a town ever existed here at all. Walking through Dyea is a peaceful, meditative experience. The scenery is beautiful, the kind of untouched Alaskan nature that reminds you why people fall in love with this part of the world. There's a feeling of being completely away from the crowds. Back in town, the cruise ship passengers are filling the shops and the streets. And here you are, just a few miles away, surrounded by towering spruce trees, fresh air, and silence. I enjoyed the peaceful walk. I loved the quietness of it. But I also think that this is one of those places where a guide is really needed. Without one, you're walking through a beautiful landscape with scattered historical markers, still very much worth doing. But with a guide, you'd better understand what stood where, who moved through this place, and just how quickly a boomtown could rise and disappear. A knowledgeable guide brings this experience to life. That said, even without a guide, I'm glad I went. It felt like the Alaska people imagined before they arrive. Quiet trails, forests, mountains, history, and that sense of being surrounded by nature instead of souvenir shops. While I was driving to Dyea, I stopped at the Slide Cemetery, one of the most poignant stops on the whole day. This cemetery is connected to the Palm Sunday avalanche, one of the tragedies of the Klondike Gold Rush. On April 3, 1898, a series of massive snow avalanches struck the Chilkoot Trail, just north of Skagway. Despite warnings from locals and experienced veterans that the spring conditions were dangerous, thousands of Gold Rush stampeders were on that trail, pressing forward in their rush to reach the Klondike. When the slides came down, many had no chance to escape. The exact number of people killed is difficult to pin down, somewhere between 48 and 100 people. Records from that time were inconsistent, and the identities of some victims remain uncertain. The victims who were recovered from beneath 30 feet of snow were brought down to Dyea for burial, in what became known as the Slide Cemetery. To this day, it's the only cemetery within the boundaries of Dyea in the Klondike Gold Rush National Historic Park. Standing there among those simple wooden markers, some bearing names and some bearing only initials or numbers, you feel the weight of what happened in this place. These were ordinary people chasing an extraordinary dream. The people who came here during the gold rush were often exhausted, desperate, underprepared, and in chasing a dream through brutal conditions. They weren't taking a shore excursion. They were risking everything. After the Palm Sunday avalanche, traffic on the Chilkoot Trail essentially vanished, and Dyea went from boomtown to ghost town almost overnight. As I returned to town, I also stopped at the Gold Rush Cemetery, which is about a mile and a half from downtown Skagway. The cemetery is famous for two graves that tell one of the wildest stories of the entire Gold Rush era: Jefferson's Soapy Smith and Frank Reed. Soapy Smith was one of the most notorious conmen of the American frontier. He had already built a criminal empire in Denver and Creek, Colorado, before arriving in Skagway in 1897 during the Klondike Gold Rush. He quickly took control of the town through a combination of charm, bribery, and intimidation, paying off politicians and law enforcement while running elaborate scams targeting the flood of eager, naive prospectors passing through. One of his most brazen schemes was a fake telegraph office. For $5, miners could send a telegraph home, except the telegraph line didn't actually reach Skagway until 1900. While the operator was pretending to send the message, he was quietly gathering information about the miner's finances. That information would then be used to lure the miner into a rigged card game, where he'd lose whatever cash he had on him. Soapy somehow also managed to be known for his charitable donations and community spirit, which only added to his mystique. He even served as the Grand Marshal of Skagway's first 4th of July parade, just days before his death. That death came on July 8, 1898. A miner named John Stewart had just returned to Skagway with $2,700 worth of gold. Soapy's gang quickly swindled it from him in a card game. When the Citizens Vigilante Group, known as the Committee of 101, demanded the gold be returned, Soapy refused. That evening, the committee held an emergency meeting. Soapy showed up, rifle in hand, and confronted the guards blocking his entrance. One of those guards was Frank Reed, a surveyor and city engineer who had literally mapped the town of Skagway and was one of the leaders of the citizen movement against Soapy. A gunfight broke out. Soapy Smith was shot through the heart and died that night. Frank Reed was critically wounded and died 12 days later. Their graves tell the rest of the story. Frank Reed was buried with full honors in the center of the cemetery. His grave marker reads, "He gave his life for the honor of Skagway." Soapy Smith, deemed unworthy of a proper burial, was laid to rest on the far side of the cemetery's perimeter. Even at death, they kept him at a distance. Plenty of people walk to the cemetery. It's not flashy nor large, but the experience does help connect the town you're visiting with the rough, chaotic Gold Rush version of Skagway that existed in the late 1890s. I ended up spending about 10 minutes there. Then it was time to head into town. By this point, most cruisers had already headed back to their ships, but it's my belief that it's important to eat a balanced diet while cruising so you have the energy to get out and explore the sites you're visiting. And when in Skagway, an essential part of my balanced diet is the fried dough from the Klondike Doughboy. Fried in what looks like a very generous amount of saturated fat and completely covered with copious amounts of cinnamon sugar. It was a sweet ending to a picture-perfect day. And yes, I did eat the whole thing. A traffic stop to top off the gas, and it was time to return the car in the same easy spot where I picked it up. And from there, just a short walk back to my cruise ship. Skagway is one of those ports that rewards you when you step off the well-worn path beyond Main Street storefronts and swinging saloon doors to go see the rugged mountain views and pristine nature. And don't get me wrong, the train is great. The town is charming, but half the people on your cruise ship are going to do the exact same thing that day. When you rent a car and go exploring on your own, driving into Canada, stopping wherever the scenery calls you, standing on a suspension bridge over a wild river canyon, walking through a ghost town in near silence, learning about avalanche victims and gold rush outlaws, that is when Skagway becomes unforgettable. You're not watching Alaska from a seat, you're in it. And the best part? Canada is right there, less than 15 miles from the dock. Most people on my ship probably didn't even cross the border that day, but I did. I had the kind of port day I love. Easy logistics, beautiful scenery, independence to do what I wanted when I wanted, and plenty of quiet moments to stop, look around, and think, this is why I love Alaska. Thanks for joining me today. If you found this video helpful in planning your Skagway Port Day, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up. It makes a huge difference for small channels like mine. And if you're planning a cruise and are looking for more tips like these, please do consider subscribing and hitting that little notification bell so you're the first to know when a new video is released. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you again soon in one of these videos. Until then, here's hoping your next adventure is just around the corner.